My brother said splitting the inheritance wouldn't be fair since he had kids, and I didn't, then found out Dad's will said otherwise. We were sitting in Dad's lawyer's office 3 days after the funeral. The office smelled like old leather and expensive cologne. My brother Garrett had brought his wife and their 2 kids, as if the sight of them would somehow influence the reading of the will. Obviously, Dad would have wanted his grandchildren taken care of, Garrett said before the lawyer even opened the folder. I mean, that's just common sense. I hadn't said a word yet, just nodded politely when the lawyer offered coffee. For the past 6 months, I'd been living in Dad's house, managing his medications, driving him to appointments, holding the basin when the chemo made him sick. Garrett visited twice, once for Christmas, once for Dad's birthday. Both times he spent most of the visit in the garage on work calls. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. The house, the savings, the investment accounts, everything split 70-30. 70% to me, 30 to Garrett. Garrett's face went white, then red. That can't be right. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Your father was very specific. He updated this will 4 months ago. 4 months? Garrett turned to me. What did you do? Did you manipulate him while he was sick? I took a sip of coffee. It was terrible, but I needed something to do with my hands. Your father left a letter, the lawyer said, sliding an envelope across the desk to Garrett. He wanted you to read it here. Garrett's hand shook as he opened it. I watched his eyes scan the page. Dad's handwriting was shaky, but legible. I'd already read my copy at home. This is insane, Garrett whispered. But he kept reading. I knew what it said. How Dad had called Garrett 17 times during his bone marrow biopsy. How Garrett's voicemail was full. How I was the one who learned to change Dad's PICC line, who researched clinical trials at 2 a.m., who held his hand through every nightmare. The letter didn't say it meanly. That wasn't Dad's style. It just stated facts. Garrett's wife put her hand on his arm. We should contest this. You can try, the lawyer said mildly. Though your father was evaluated by 2 doctors who confirmed his mental competency when signing, the meeting ended in silence. Garrett left without looking at me. That was 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, Garrett's wife called. Her voice was different, smaller. We need to talk about Garrett. My stomach dropped. What happened? He's been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. The doctors say it's aggressive. He's going to need round-the-clock care within a year. The silence stretched between us. We can't afford the kind of facility he needs, she continued. With the medical bills and the kids' college funds, we're already stretched thin. I know things have been difficult between you 2, but he's still your brother. I thought about Dad's letter, about the 17 missed calls, about Garrett's work calls in the garage while Dad deteriorated upstairs. I need you to consider something, she said. We were thinking you could use part of your inheritance to help cover his care. It's what family does, and you don't have kids to worry about, so I set my phone down on the kitchen counter, stared at it, picked it up. I need to think about this, I said. Of course, but we need an answer soon. His first evaluation is scheduled for next week, and there was a knock at my door. I moved to the window and looked out. A black Mercedes was parked in my driveway. I have to go, I told her. Wait, we really need to... I hung up. The knock came again, harder this time. I opened the door to find a woman in her 60s standing on my porch. She wore an expensive pantsuit and carried a leather briefcase. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes were the same shade of blue as Dad's. Can I help you? I asked. I'm Patricia Dunmore, she said. I'm your father's sister. I stared at her. Dad never mentioned having a sister. May I come in? I stepped aside. She walked past me into the living room, taking in the space with careful eyes. Dad's reading chair still had his book on the armrest. I hadn't been able to move it. Patricia sat on the couch without being invited. She set her briefcase on the coffee table and opened it. I know you're confused, she said. Your father and I were estranged for 37 years. We had a falling out when he was 23. I recently learned of his death through a mutual contact. Why are you here? She pulled out a folder. Because your father's lawyer contacted me. Apparently, there's a second will, one that supersedes the document read 3 weeks ago. My hands went cold. That's impossible, I said. The lawyer told us. The lawyer knew about the first will. This second one was kept with my attorney in Boston. It was written 8 years ago, long before your father got sick. She slid the folder across the table. Everything is legitimate. I've had 3 different law firms verify it. I didn't touch the folder. What does it say? Patricia leaned back. Your father left specific instructions. The 70-30 split remains in effect, but only if certain conditions are met. If those conditions aren't fulfilled within 90 days of his death, the entire estate goes to charity, the American Cancer Society specifically. What conditions? You have to take care of Garrett. The words hung in the air between us. Excuse me? Your father knew about Garrett's diagnosis. He'd known for 2 years. I stood up. That's not possible. My sister-in-law just told me yesterday. Patricia opened another document. Your father received a call from Garrett's neurologist 23 months ago. Garrett had put your father down as his emergency contact and forgot to update it. The doctor thought your father should know. She showed me a phone record. Dad's cell phone, a number I knew by heart. Multiple calls to and from a Boston neurology clinic. Dad never said anything. No, he wanted to see what Garrett would do, whether he'd come to him for help, whether he'd be honest. Patricia's expression was unreadable. Garrett chose not to tell him. Not even when your father was dying. I sat back down. So this whole thing with the inheritance was a test? In a way. Your father wanted to see how you'd react when Garrett's wife asked for help. He predicted almost exactly how it would play out. He knew she'd call. He knew she'd use the kids as leverage. He knew she'd mention you don't have children. My throat felt tight. And if I say no, then the charity gets everything. But if you agree to help Garrett, to genuinely help him through his illness the way you helped your father, then you get everything. The full estate. Not 70-30, all of it. How much are we talking about? Patricia smiled slightly. Your father was more successful than he let on. The estate is worth approximately $4.7 million. I couldn't breathe. That can't be right. The lawyer said, the first will only cover assets your father held in his own name. The rest was in trusts, investment accounts, and property holdings that weren't disclosed in the initial reading. Your father was very good at keeping secrets. I thought about the house, the modest car, the simple life Dad had lived. Why would he hide this? Because he wanted to see who people really were. Garrett knew about some of it. Not all of it, but enough. That's why he was so angry about the 30%. He thought he was being cheated out of millions. Patricia stood and walked to the window. Your father made a lot of money in commercial real estate in the 80s. He sold everything right before the market crashed in 2008. Then he invested in tech stocks that most people had never heard of. By the time he got sick, his portfolio had grown to a size that would have changed how people treated him. So he pretended to be middle class? He wanted authentic relationships. He wanted to know who would show up when there was nothing to gain. She turned to face me. You showed up. Even when it was hard. Even when Garrett didn't. I looked at the folder on the table. What happens if I don't decide within 90 days? Today is day 73. You have 17 days left. And I have to help Garrett? What does that even mean? Pay for his care? Visit him? Patricia pulled out another document. Your father was very specific. You have to provide direct care, the same way you did for him. You don't have to do it alone. You can hire nurses, caregivers, whatever you need. But you have to be involved. You have to show up. For how long? Until he no longer recognizes you? The neurologist estimates that will be approximately 18 months from now. I laughed. It came out bitter. So I have to spend a year and a half taking care of the brother who couldn't be bothered to answer the phone when Dad was dying. Yes. And if I do this, I get $4.7 million. Minus taxes and the cost of Garrett's care. But yes, essentially. I stood and walked to Dad's chair, picked up his book. It was a biography of Theodore Roosevelt, bookmarked halfway through. He'd never get to finish it. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Why did you and Dad stop speaking? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. I told him he was wasting his life. He'd just married your mother and I thought he was settling. I wanted him to move to New York to build something bigger. We said things we couldn't take back. By the time I realized I was wrong, 30 years had passed. Pride is a hell of a thing. Did you ever try to reconcile? Once. About 5 years ago. I called him, but he'd changed his number. I sent a letter to his old address, but it was returned. I hired a private investigator, but by the time I found him, he'd already been diagnosed. I didn't want our reunion to be about him dying. She looked at me. I regret that decision every day. The afternoon sun was coming through the windows at an angle, hitting Dad's chair the way it always did around 3 p.m. He used to sit there and read until dinner. He talked about you once, I said. I was maybe 12. We were driving somewhere, and a song came on the radio. He got this look on his face, sort of sad and distant. He said he had a sister who loved that song. Then he changed the station and never mentioned it again. Patricia's eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. Bridge over troubled water? I nodded. She sat back down, suddenly looking older. We used to sing it together when we were kids. Terribly, I might add. We sounded like wounded cats. Despite everything, I smiled. My phone buzzed. A text from Garrett's wife. Have you thought about what we discussed? I showed Patricia the message. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know yet. Do you want my advice? Will you give it to me even if I say no? She smiled. Probably, but I'll ask anyway. Go ahead. Think about what your father was really trying to teach you. This isn't just about the money. It's about whether you can be the bigger person. Whether you can show compassion to someone who didn't show it to you. That sounds like something a motivational poster would say. Doesn't make it less true. I set my phone down. Garrett doesn't deserve my help. No, he doesn't. Dad knew that. Yes. So why would he ask this of me? Patricia closed her briefcase. Because the test isn't about what Garrett deserves. It's about who you are when no one's watching. When there's no reward except knowing you did the right thing. She stood. Except in this case, there is a reward. A very substantial one. That feels manipulative. It is manipulative. Your father wasn't perfect, but he was trying to teach you something important in the only way he knew how. She handed me a business card. My number is on there. Call me when you've made your decision. Or if you just want to talk about him. I'd like to know what kind of man he became. After she left, I sat in Dad's chair for a long time. The book felt heavy in my hands. My phone rang. Garrett's wife again. I answered. I'm sorry for being pushy earlier, she said. I know this is a lot to process, but I need to tell you something important. Something I should have told you weeks ago. What? Garrett knew. About the will. About the split. Your father told him 6 months before he died. He wanted to give Garrett a chance to change, to step up. Garrett chose not to. I closed my eyes. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of lying. Garrett made me promise not to say anything. He thought if you knew, you'd hold it against him even more than you already do. She paused. He was right. Is he really sick? Yes. That part is true. The diagnosis, the timeline, all of it. But he's known for 2 years. He kept it from everyone, including me, until the symptoms got too obvious to hide. Why? Pride, shame, fear. Pick one. Garrett spent his whole life being the golden child, the successful one, the one with the perfect family. He couldn't handle the idea of being weak. I thought about the 17 missed calls, about Garrett in the garage on work calls, while Dad lay dying upstairs. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing. I just wanted you to know the truth. Whatever you decide, you should decide based on fact, not guilt. She took a breath. And I wanted to apologize for the way I spoke to you, about not having kids. That was cruel, and I'm sorry. After we hung up, I sat there as the sun set. The room grew dark, but I didn't turn on the lights. I thought about Dad's letter, about the facts he'd laid out so carefully. Not meanly, just truthfully. I thought about Patricia's question. What kind of person was I when no one was watching? Except someone was watching. Dad had built this entire test knowing I'd be sitting exactly where I was sitting, trying to figure out what to do. I picked up my phone and called the number Patricia had given me. "I'll do it," I said when she answered. "I'll take care of Garrett." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm going to do it anyway." "Why?" I looked at Dad's book, the bookmark sticking out halfway through. Because Dad didn't get to finish his story, but I can finish mine. The next morning, I drove to Garrett's house. His wife answered the door, surprise clear on her face. "I'm here to see my brother," I said. She led me to the den. Garrett was sitting in front of the television, but he wasn't watching it. His eyes were unfocused, distant. When he saw me, he stood quickly. Too quickly. He stumbled slightly, catching himself on the armrest. "What are you doing here?" His voice was defensive, but there was something else underneath. Fear. "We need to talk." His wife excused herself, closing the door behind her. I sat down. Garrett remained standing. "I know about the diagnosis," I said. "I know you've known for 2 years. I know Dad told you about the will 6 months before he died." Garrett's face crumbled. He sat down heavily. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. I wanted to be there. I wanted to help, but I couldn't. I couldn't watch him die knowing I was dying too. So you just didn't show up? I thought I had time. I thought I could fix things later, after he got better. But he didn't get better." Garrett's hands were shaking, and now it's too late. I watched my brother fall apart in front of me. The golden child. The successful one. The one who'd always had it figured out. "I can't forgive you," I said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "But I'm going to help you anyway." His head snapped up. "What?" "I'm going to take care of you, the way I took care of Dad. Not because you deserve it, not because we're suddenly okay, but because it's the right thing to do." "Why would you do that?" "Because Dad asked me to, and because I'm not you." Over the next 2 weeks, I moved some of my things into Garrett's guest room. I met with his neurologist, learned about his medications, and started coordinating his care. His wife went back to work, grateful for the help. The kids, teenagers now, were confused but accepting. Garrett was difficult at first. Defensive. He'd snap at me when I tried to help him remember his pills. He'd refuse to do the cognitive exercises the doctor recommended. He'd insist he was fine. He could handle it himself. He didn't need his little sister taking care of him. But slowly, the fight went out of him. One night, about 3 weeks in, I found him crying in the kitchen at 2 a.m. "I can't remember where the glasses are," he said. "I've lived in this house for 12 years and I can't remember where we keep the glasses." I got him a glass from the cabinet, filled it with water. He drank it slowly, his hands trembling. "I'm scared," he whispered. "I know. I don't want to forget my kids. I don't want to forget my life. I'll help you remember," I said, "for as long as I can." The next day, I started a journal. I wrote down everything. The names of his kids, his wife, his parents, the address of his house, his favorite foods, the way he liked his coffee, stories from our childhood, details about his work, his friends, his life. I showed it to him that evening. "When you forget," I said, "I'll read this to you. I'll help you remember who you are." He hugged me then, first time in probably 20 years. "I don't deserve this," he said. "I don't deserve you." "No," I agreed. "You don't." But I stayed anyway. The months passed. Garrett's decline was gradual at first, then rapid. He'd forget conversations we'd had that morning. He'd ask the same questions over and over. He'd get confused about where he was, why I was there. His kids struggled. They'd come home from school and their dad wouldn't recognize them. Or he'd think they were still children, asking about homework from classes they'd taken years ago. I was there for all of it, the good days and the bad ones, the moments of clarity and the long stretches of confusion. 6 months in, Patricia came to visit. She sat with Garrett for an afternoon, telling him stories about Dad when he was young. Garrett listened, sometimes understanding, sometimes not. "You're doing a good thing," she told me later. "Your father would be proud." "I'm not doing it for pride." "I know. That's why he would be proud." One evening, about 8 months into caring for Garrett, I was reading to him from the journal. His wife was at a parent-teacher conference. The kids were upstairs doing homework. "Dad called you 17 times, I read. During his bone marrow biopsy, your voicemail was full." Garrett looked at me with clear eyes, one of his increasingly rare moments of lucidity. "I know," he said. "I listened to the messages later." He sounded scared. "He needed me and I wasn't there." "Why didn't you call back?" "Because I knew if I heard his voice, really heard it, I'd have to admit he was dying, and I couldn't do that. So I just let the voicemails pile up." He started crying. I was a coward. I closed the journal. "Yes," I said. "You were. Do you hate me?" I thought about that for a long time. "No," I said finally. "I did, for a while. But hate takes too much energy, and you need all the energy I have. I don't understand why you're doing this." "Neither do I, sometimes." He smiled slightly. "That's honest, at least." The next day, he didn't remember the conversation, or me, or where he was. It was the beginning of the end. 90 days came and went. I called Patricia to confirm the conditions had been met. "More than met," she said. "I've been receiving regular updates from the care team. You've gone above and beyond. When do I get access to the estate? The probate process will take a few months, but I can start transferring some funds now if you need them for Garrett's care. That would help. I'll have my attorney draw up the paperwork." That night, I sat in Dad's chair. I'd brought it to Garrett's house along with his book. I'd finally finished it. The Theodore Roosevelt biography. The last chapter was about Roosevelt's later years after he'd left office, about how he'd traveled and written and lived fully until the end. Dad had underlined a quote, "Do what you can, with what you have, where you are." I understood now. This whole thing, the wills, the conditions, the test, it wasn't about the money. It was about whether I could look at someone who'd hurt me and still choose compassion. Garrett died 11 months later, peacefully, in his sleep. By then he didn't recognize anyone. Not his wife, not his kids, not me. But I was there, holding his hand, the way I'd held Dad's. At the funeral, his wife pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I know it wasn't easy." "No," I agreed. "It wasn't. Why did you do it?" I thought about Dad's book, about the underlined quote. "Because I could." The estate was settled 3 months later. After taxes and Garrett's medical expenses, I netted about $3.2 million, more money than I'd ever imagined having. Patricia helped me set up trusts and investments. We had coffee every other week, talking about Dad, about Garrett, about life. "What are you going to do with it?" she asked one afternoon. "The money. I'm not sure yet. Part of it will go to Garrett's kids for college. They shouldn't be punished for their father's mistakes." "That's generous." "It's fair." I stirred my coffee. "I'm thinking about starting a foundation for families dealing with terminal illness, to help with expenses, with care, with all the things insurance doesn't cover. Your father would love that, would he?" "I never really knew what he wanted." Patricia smiled. "He wanted you to be happy and to be kind. Looks like you figured out how to do both." I drove to the cemetery after that, stood between Dad's grave and Garrett's. They were buried next to each other, at Dad's request. I hadn't known about that request until after Garrett died, but it made sense. Dad had probably planned it years ago. "I passed your test," I told Dad's headstone. "I don't know if I'm supposed to feel differently now, enlightened or something, but mostly I just feel tired." The wind blew through the trees. Garrett said he was sorry, near the end. "I don't know if that matters to you." It didn't matter much to me, but I thought you should know. I sat down on the grass between them. "Patricia says you'd be proud. I hope she's right. I hope this was what you wanted. But honestly, Dad, I wish you'd just told me. All the games, all the tests, all the secrets. I would have helped Garrett anyway if you just asked. You didn't need to dangle millions of dollars in front of me." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. Without the money, without the stakes, would I have shown up? Would I have stayed through the hard parts? I wanted to believe I would have, but I couldn't be certain. "Maybe you knew me better than I knew myself," I admitted. I stayed there until the sun started to set. Then I drove home to Dad's house. My house now. The rooms were full of his things. Books, photographs, furniture, pieces of a life well lived, if quietly. I found his journal in his desk drawer. I'd never looked through his personal papers before. It felt invasive, but now I wanted to understand. The entries were sporadic. A few lines here and there, thoughts and observations. One entry, dated 2 months before he died. "Told Garrett about the will today. Gave him a chance to change. Not sure if he'll take it. Hope he does. Hope I'm wrong about him." 3 weeks later. Garrett didn't call. Not surprised. Disappointed, but not surprised. And then, a week before he died, called Patricia's attorney, set up the second will. "If I'm right about who my children really are, this will work out the way it should. If I'm wrong, well, cancer patients can use the money." The final entry was dated the day before he died. "Tired today, ready to rest, but also curious. Curious to see what happens next. Not to me. I know where I'm going. Curious about her. About whether she'll choose kindness over anger. I think she will. She's stronger than she knows." I closed the journal and set it back in the drawer. "I chose kindness," I said to the empty room. "But it was harder than you thought it would be." The house was quiet. I made dinner, ate alone at the kitchen table, washed the dishes, normal things, everyday things, but they felt different now, lighter somehow. I called Garrett's wife that evening. "How are the kids?" I asked. "Managing. It's hard, but they're resilient. I want to set up college funds for them, separate from everything else. They'll have full rides anywhere they want to go." She was quiet for a moment. "You don't have to do that." "I know, but I want to. Thank you. They'll appreciate it when they're older. Tell them it's from their grandfather and their father, not from me." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started researching nonprofit organizations. How to start them, how to run them, what families dealing with terminal illness actually needed. The foundation took shape over the next year. We called it the Last Mile Project. Services for families in the final stages of terminal illness. Financial assistance, care coordination, respite care for primary caregivers. Patricia joined the board, so did Garrett's wife, and 2 of the nurses who'd helped care for Dad. We helped 43 families in our first year, covered over $800,000 in medical expenses that insurance wouldn't pay. I met a lot of people like me, who were watching someone they loved slip away, people who were exhausted and scared and trying to hold everything together. I told them what I'd learned, that it was okay to be angry, that it was okay to need help, that showing up was enough, even when it didn't feel like enough. Some days were good. We'd get a thank you letter from a family we'd helped. We'd secure a grant that would let us expand services. Other days were hard. We'd lose someone we'd been helping. We'd run into bureaucratic nightmares with insurance companies. We'd come up against our own limitations. But we kept going. 2 years after Dad died, I went back to the cemetery. Both graves were well maintained. I'd hired a service to keep them clean, to leave fresh flowers. "I'm doing okay," I told them both. "Not great, but okay. The foundation is growing. We're helping people. I think you'd like that, Dad. Even you, Garrett. When you were yourself, you had a good heart. You just forgot to use it sometimes." I sat down on the grass. "I forgive you, Garrett. I'm not sure when it happened. It wasn't a big moment, just a gradual letting go. You were sick. You were scared. You made bad choices. But you were still my brother." The wind blew. Somewhere nearby, a bird was singing. "I'm dating someone," I continued. "A doctor I met through the foundation. He's kind. He shows up. I think you'd approve, Dad. Though you'd probably give him the 3rd degree about his intentions." I smiled at the thought. I'm happy. Not the way I thought I'd be happy. This isn't the life I planned, but it's a good life. A meaningful one. I stood up, brushing grass off my jeans. "Thank you, Dad, for the test. For believing I'd pass it. For giving me the chance to be better than I thought I was." I walked back to my car. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone rang. The foundation's care coordinator. "We have a new family," she said. "Father with pancreatic cancer, 3 kids. Wife is overwhelmed. They need help. I'll meet with them tomorrow," I said. "Send me the details." As I drove home, I thought about Dad's underlined quote, "Do what you can, with what you have, where you are." I was doing that now, every day. The money helped. It gave me freedom to focus on work that mattered, to help people who needed it. But the real gift Dad had given me wasn't the inheritance. It was the chance to discover who I was when tested, to find out that I could choose compassion over bitterness, that I could show up for someone who'd hurt me, that I was stronger than I knew. I pulled into my driveway. The house was dark, but welcoming. I went inside, made tea, and sat in Dad's chair. Opened his Theodore Roosevelt biography to the underlined quote, read it again, and understood. Dad wasn't testing whether I'd help Garrett for the money. He was showing me that I'd help Garrett despite everything, that it was in my nature to show up, to care, to do the hard thing because it was right. The money was just permission to keep doing it, for more people, on a bigger scale. 3 years after Dad died, Patricia and I were having our regular coffee when she asked, "Do you ever regret it? Taking care of Garrett?" "No," I said, and I meant it. It was hard, the hardest thing I've ever done, but it taught me something important. What's that? That the person you are in your worst moments matters more than the person you are in your best ones. Anyone can be kind when it's easy, but showing up when it's hard, when you get nothing back, when every instinct says to walk away, that's when you find out who you really are. Patricia smiled. "Your father knew that about you, did he? That's why he left you everything, not because you earned it, but because he knew you'd use it the way he would have, to help people, to make things better." I finished my coffee. "I have a question for you," I said. "Go ahead. Do you regret the years you lost with Dad?" She was quiet for a long time. "Every day," she said finally. "But I can't change the past. All I can do is honor his memory by being there for you, by helping with the foundation, by trying to be the person he believed I could be." "He talked about you more than you think," I said. "Near the end, he told me once that you were the smart one, that you saw possibilities he couldn't see." Her eyes filled with tears. "I wish I'd been there." "I know. But you're here now. That's what matters." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Patricia said, "I have something for you. I was saving it for the right time, and I think this might be it." She pulled an envelope from her purse. Old, yellowed with age. "Your father gave this to my attorney 20 years ago, with instructions to give it to you when the time was right. I think we've reached that point." I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in Dad's handwriting, stronger, clearer than the shaky script from his final months. "My dear daughter," it began, "if you're reading this, it means you passed the test. Not because you wanted the money, though I hope it helps you build a good life, but because you chose kindness when you could have chosen anger. I know it wasn't fair what I asked of you, to care for someone who hurt you, to show up when he didn't, but I also knew you could handle it, because that's who you are. You were 4 years old when I realized it. You found a bird with a broken wing in the backyard. You insisted we take it to the vet, even though I explained it probably wouldn't survive. You cried when it died, but you still wanted to bury it properly, to give it a funeral. That's when I knew you had a capacity for compassion that couldn't be taught. It was just there, fundamental to who you were. Garrett didn't have that. I loved him, but I saw his limitations. He was a good son in his own way, but he didn't have your strength, your ability to keep showing up, even when it hurt. I'm sorry I put you through this test. I'm sorry I wasn't more direct. But I needed to know that you'd be okay after I was gone, that you'd use whatever I left you to do good in the world, and I needed Garrett to have someone who'd care for him when his mind started to go. His wife loves him, but she wouldn't have been able to handle it alone. He needed you, even though he didn't deserve you. Thank you for being who you are, for being strong enough to be kind, for showing up when it mattered. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. Love, Dad." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. "He knew," I said to Patricia. "He knew I'd do it. He had faith in you. But what if I'd said no? What if I'd chosen the money over helping Garrett?" Patricia shook her head. "Then you wouldn't have gotten the money. That was the whole point. He knew you'd only get it if you were the person he believed you to be. And you are." I drove to the cemetery one last time that day, sat between their graves. "I got your letter," I told Dad. "Took you long enough to explain yourself. The wind blew through the trees. You were right. About me. About Garrett. About all of it. I don't know how you knew, but you did." I placed the letter on his grave, weighted down with a stone. "I'm going to keep doing this. The foundation, the helping. Not because of the money, but because you showed me I could." I stood up, looked at Garrett's grave. "And you. You made it hard, but you taught me something too. That I'm capable of forgiving things I didn't think I could forgive. That I'm stronger than I believed." I walked back to my car, drove home, made dinner. Normal things, everyday things, but meaningful. All of it meaningful. Because I'd learned what Dad was trying to teach me. That showing up matters. That compassion is a choice we make every day. That the inheritance that matters isn't money. It's who we become in the process of earning it. And I'd become someone I was proud of. Someone Dad would be proud of. That was worth more than $4.7 million. Though I had to admit having both was pretty nice. I smiled at the thought. Opened my laptop. Started reviewing applications for the foundation's next round of assistance. There was a single mother whose husband was dying of ALS. She needed help with equipment, with respite care, with just making it through each day. I approved her application immediately, sent an email to our care coordinator to reach out. Then I closed the laptop and sat back in Dad's chair, picked up his book, read the underlined quote one more time. Do what you can, with what you have, where you are. I was doing exactly that, and it was enough, more than enough. It was everything. My best friend asked me to be her maid of honor. But she had no idea I'd been sleeping with her fiancé for 2 years. Sarah squeezed my hands in her living room, eyes bright with wedding fever and champagne. "Emma, I can't imagine anyone else standing beside me on the biggest day of my life," she gushed, her engagement ring catching the afternoon light. Behind her, professional engagement photos covered every surface, her radiant smile next to Marcus's practiced grin, both of them looking like the perfect couple everyone believed them to be. I forced enthusiasm into my voice, hoping the guilt wasn't written across my face. "Of course. I'm so honored you asked." The irony wasn't lost on me. Neither was the sick twist in my stomach. It started innocently enough, the way these things always do. 2 years ago, Marcus and I were paired together for Sarah's surprise birthday planning committee. She'd always been the type to love elaborate celebrations, and organizing a party for someone that detail-oriented required military precision. Late nights coordinating vendors and managing guest lists turned into lingering conversations over coffee that stretched well past midnight. That's when Marcus first confessed he felt trapped. Said Sarah had rushed their relationship, pushed for the engagement before he was ready, that he wasn't sure about marriage, but couldn't disappoint her without looking like the bad guy. "She's already planning our whole future," he'd said, running stressed fingers through his dark hair. "Wedding venues, honeymoon destinations, how many kids we'll have and when." I never agreed to any of it, but somehow I'm locked into this timeline I didn't create. I should have shut it down right then. Should have told him to talk to Sarah about his concerns or break up with her if he wasn't committed. Instead, I offered comfort. I listened. I sympathized with his position while completely ignoring Sarah's. One thing led to another in his apartment while Sarah worked a double shift at the hospital, saving lives while I destroyed her future. We told ourselves it was just stress relief, a one-time mistake born of too much wine and emotional vulnerability. 2 years later, we were still making that same mistake twice a week, sometimes 3, when Sarah's schedule was particularly demanding. The wedding planning began immediately after Sarah's birthday party. She dragged me to venue tours, cake tastings, dress fittings, floral consultations. Each appointment was pure torture, watching her plan what she thought would be the perfect day while I carried the secret that would obliterate everything she was building. She'd get so excited about tiny details, the way the light would hit her dress during the ceremony, how the centerpieces would complement the bridesmaids' gowns, whether the band or DJ would create the right atmosphere for their first dance. She'd planned everything down to the color of the napkins, and every decision included a story about why it mattered to her and Marcus. "He loves gardenias," she'd say, pointing to floral arrangements. "His grandmother grew them. I want him to think of her when he sees them at our wedding." Meanwhile, Marcus would text me during these outings. Simple messages like, "Missing you," or "Can't wait to see you tonight," that I'd delete before Sarah could notice. The guilt was eating me alive, but I couldn't seem to stop. Neither could he. The sex was incredible, which made everything worse. There was an intensity born of secrecy, a desperate hunger that came from stolen moments and the constant threat of discovery. We'd meet at hotels across town, in his apartment when Sarah was working, occasionally at my place when we were certain she'd be busy for hours. But it wasn't just physical. Marcus would talk to me in ways he apparently didn't talk to Sarah. About his fears, his dreams, his frustrations with work and family pressure. He'd hold me afterward and tell me things he claimed he'd never told anyone. Part of me knew he was probably manipulating me, using intimacy to justify what we were doing, but I wanted so desperately to believe I meant something to him. 3 months before the wedding, Sarah confided her deepest fear over wine at our monthly girls' night. "Sometimes I worry Marcus seems distant," she said, swirling her glass nervously. "Like he's physically there, but his mind is somewhere else entirely. Do you think that's normal?" My stomach clenched so hard I thought I might vomit right there on her coffee table. "Pre-wedding jitters," I managed to say smoothly. "Completely normal. Men process big life changes differently than we do." She nodded, visibly relieved by my false expertise. "You're right. I'm probably overthinking everything. Thank God I have you to keep me grounded." If only she knew exactly where his mind wandered during those distant moments. If only she knew that while she worried about wedding details, he was texting another woman, me. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening last week. Sarah called me at home, sobbing so hysterically I could barely understand her words. "I found something in Marcus's car," she choked out between gasping breaths. My blood turned to ice. My hands started shaking so violently I nearly dropped the phone. "What did you find?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "A receipt from Victoria's Secret, for lingerie. Expensive stuff. In a size I've never worn in my life." The room started spinning. I remembered that shopping trip perfectly. Marcus buying me that black lace set I'd admired in the window. He'd been so eager to see me in it. Said it would drive him crazy thinking about me wearing it under my regular clothes. "Maybe it's for you?" I suggested weakly, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "A wedding night surprise?" "No," she whispered, and I could hear her moving around, probably pacing her apartment the way she did when anxious. I checked the date on the receipt. "It's from 3 weeks ago, when I was visiting my sister in Portland for 2 weeks. He was supposed to be alone, working late every night. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, my confession balanced on the tip of my tongue, ready to spill out and end this nightmare once and for all. Then Sarah's voice changed, hardening in a way I'd never heard before. It was cold, calculating, nothing like the warm woman I'd known since college. "I'm going to find out who she is," she said with frightening calm, "and when I do, I'm going to destroy her life the same way she's destroyed mine." The line went dead before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone in horror. That night, Marcus called in a panic. "She knows something," he said. "She's been going through my things, asking weird questions. What if she finds out about us? We need to end this," I whispered, "before it's too late." "End what?" The affair or the engagement? Before I could answer, he continued frantically. Emma, you don't understand what this will do to me. My business depends on contracts from her father's firm. If this comes out, I lose everything. The house we bought together, my reputation, my entire life is built around this relationship. His words stung more than I expected. Not once did he mention losing me or what we had together. I was just collateral damage in his real life with Sarah. Then maybe you should have thought about that before starting this, I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Don't act like this is all my fault, he shot back. You were just as willing. You could have said no at any time. So could you. And for the record, you're the one who was engaged. You're the one who made commitments to her. We hung up on each other, both angry and scared and completely out of options. 10 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I looked at the clock, 9:47 p.m. Nobody visited me that late without calling first. I crept to the front window and peered through the blinds. My heart stopped. Sarah was standing on my porch, illuminated by the light from my front door. But something was wrong with the scene. She wasn't crying or agitated like I'd expect from someone who just discovered their fiancé's betrayal. Instead, she stood perfectly still, her face eerily calm in the darkness. Almost predatory. She knew. I approached the door on trembling legs. Through the peephole, I could see Sarah's face clearly now. She was smiling, but it wasn't her usual warm expression. This smile was sharp, calculating. Emma, she called through the door, her voice perfectly normal, almost cheerful. I know you're home. Your car's in the driveway and I can see the lights on. We need to talk. I knew I was trapped. Refusing to let her in would only confirm her suspicions. I unlocked the door and opened it slowly, trying to keep my expression neutral. Hey, I said, stepping aside to let her in. Everything okay? You sounded upset on the phone earlier. Sarah walked past me into my living room, taking in the space like she was seeing it for the first time. She'd been here dozens of times before, but tonight she moved differently, more deliberately, like she was cataloging details. I've been thinking about our conversation, she said, settling onto my couch with that same unsettling smile. About the lingerie receipt and Marcus acting distant. I sat across from her in my armchair, maintaining as much distance as possible. Did you talk to him about it? Oh, yes. We had a very interesting conversation. She crossed her legs and leaned back, completely relaxed. He insists the lingerie was meant as a surprise for me. A very expensive surprise, apparently. La Perla. Do you know that brand, Emma? My mouth went dry. I think I've heard of it. It's quite luxurious. The set he bought costs more than most people spend on an entire wardrobe. Black lace. Very sexy. Very specific sizing. Her eyes never left my face. Size 34C. Which is interesting because I'm a 36B. The room felt like it was closing in around me. Sarah knew my bra size. We'd shopped together countless times, shared dressing rooms, borrowed each other's clothes in college. Maybe he guessed wrong? I suggested weakly. That's what I thought initially, Sarah said, her voice still maddeningly calm. Men are notoriously bad at guessing women's sizes. But then I got curious about the timing. Why would he buy me lingerie when I was out of town? Why not wait until I got back so we could enjoy it together? She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, scrolling through something. So I started thinking about what Marcus was doing while I was in Portland. And then I remembered. You helped him with some work project that week. Something about client presentations. You spent quite a bit of time together, didn't you? My heart was hammering so hard I was sure she could hear it. We worked on a few proposals together. Nothing major. At his apartment? Sometimes. And his office. She nodded like she was processing this information. And you mentioned he seemed stressed about the wedding. It was nice of you to help him work through those feelings. The way she said it made my skin crawl. There was no accusation in her tone, nothing I could point to as evidence that she knew the truth. But somehow her calm politeness was more terrifying than any angry confrontation would have been. Sarah, what's this really about? I asked, trying to regain some control of the conversation. I told you, I'm trying to understand why my fiancé bought lingerie in another woman's size when I was out of town. She tilted her head slightly, studying my face. Unless you have some insight that might help me figure this out, this was it. My chance to confess, to end the charade before it got worse. The words were right there, begging to be spoken. Instead, I heard myself saying, maybe he was buying it for someone else to give to you? Like, maybe he asked his sister or a female friend to help him pick something out? It was a ridiculous explanation, and we both knew it, but Sarah just nodded thoughtfully. That's an interesting theory. Although it doesn't explain why he was so nervous when I asked about it, or why he couldn't seem to remember where he'd hidden this alleged surprise. She stood up suddenly, smoothing down her skirt. Well, I should let you get some sleep. I just wanted to run this by you. Get your perspective as someone who knows both of us so well. She headed toward the door, then paused and turned back. Oh, Emma? I'm hiring a private investigator tomorrow. Just to put my mind at ease, you understand? If Marcus is innocent, there's nothing to worry about. But if someone is lying to me, she shrugged, her smile turning genuinely cold for the first time. Well, I suppose we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. After she left, I immediately called Marcus back. He answered on the first ring. What did she want? He demanded. She knows, I said flatly. Maybe not the details yet, but she knows something is wrong. And Marcus? She's hiring a private investigator. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Marcus? I'm here. I'm just processing. Emma? If they start investigating, they're going to find everything. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, probably photos of us together. I know. We need to stay away from each other until this blows over. No contact, no meetings, nothing that could be misconstrued. And what if it doesn't blow over? What if she finds evidence? Then we deny everything. Say it's all circumstantial, that we were just working together and someone's jumping to conclusions. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Marcus, you want to lie to her face even if she has proof? What choice do we have? His voice was getting desperate now. Emma, you don't understand what this will do to me. If this comes out, I lose everything. My business depends on contracts from Sarah's father's firm, my reputation in this town, the house we bought together. My entire life is built around this relationship. His words stung more than I expected. Not once did he mention losing me or what we had together. I was just collateral damage in his real life with Sarah. Then maybe you should have thought about that before starting this affair, I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Don't act like this is all my fault, he shot back. You were just as willing. You could have said no at any time. So could you. And for the record, you're the one who was engaged. You're the one who made commitments to her. You knew I was engaged when this started. Yes, and that makes me a terrible person. But it doesn't make you any less responsible for your choices. We hung up on each other, both angry and scared and completely out of options. The next few days passed in agonizing slow motion. Every phone call, every text message, every unexpected noise made me jump. I kept expecting Sarah to call with accusations or demand answers. Instead, I got normal texts about wedding planning, updates about the florist, and questions about the bachelorette party itinerary. The normalcy was somehow worse than confrontation would have been. It felt like she was playing with me, letting me squirm while she gathered evidence. On Thursday, she texted asking if I wanted to grab lunch on Saturday. Just the two of us, she said, to discuss some last-minute wedding details. I agreed because refusing would have been suspicious, but every instinct told me it was a trap. I barely slept Friday night. By Saturday morning, I'd worked myself into such a state of anxiety that I considered calling in sick, but I knew that would only delay the inevitable. We met at our usual spot, a small cafe downtown where we'd shared countless conversations over the years. Sarah was already seated when I arrived, looking perfectly put together in a cream-colored blouse and dark jeans. She smiled and waved me over like nothing had changed. Emma, perfect timing. I just ordered for both of us. I slid into the seat across from her, trying to read her expression. Thanks. What did you want to discuss about the wedding? Actually, she said, leaning forward slightly, I wanted to update you on something. Remember how I mentioned hiring a private investigator? My stomach dropped. Did you go through with it? Oh yes, very thorough gentleman, former police detective with an excellent reputation. She sipped her coffee calmly. He's been following Marcus for 3 days now. The cafe suddenly felt stifling. I could barely breathe. And? Well, the good news is that Marcus hasn't been meeting with any mysterious women this week. His schedule has been remarkably predictable. Work, gym, home. Very responsible behavior for a man about to be married. I felt a tiny spark of relief, quickly extinguished by her next words. Of course, the investigator also pulled Marcus's credit card records for the past 6 months. With a court order, it's amazing what information becomes available. My hands started trembling. I clasped them in my lap, hoping she wouldn't notice. Turns out Marcus has been quite busy. Hotels rooms charged to his personal card on days when he told me he was working late. Expensive dinners at restaurants we've never been to together. Flower deliveries to an address that isn't our home or his office. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder, setting it on the table between us. Care to guess whose address those flowers were delivered to? I stared at the folder, knowing my address was written somewhere inside it, along with God knows what other evidence of our affair. Sarah. The investigator also pulled phone records, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. Very interesting patterns of communication. Daily calls and texts between Marcus and a number that turned out to be registered to someone very close to me. She opened the folder and pulled out several printed pages, spreading them across the table like playing cards. Phone records with numbers highlighted in yellow, credit card statements with hotel charges circled in red, photos that must have been taken weeks ago, before we'd started being careful. One photo showed Marcus and me walking out of a hotel together. Another captured us kissing in the parking lot of a restaurant across town. A third showed me leaving his apartment building at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday when Sarah thought I was at a yoga class. 2 years, Sarah said quietly, her composure finally starting to crack. The records go back 2 years. 2 years of lies, Emma. 2 years of planning my future with a man who was sleeping with my best friend. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. The investigator estimates you've been together at least twice a week for the past 24 months. Hotel rooms, his apartment, your place, even a weekend getaway to that little bed and breakfast in wine country that I suggested for our honeymoon. That detail hit me like a physical blow. Marcus had taken me to the place Sarah had chosen for their honeymoon. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. Say something, Sarah demanded, her voice finally showing emotion. Explain this to me. Help me understand how my best friend could do this to me. I looked up at her face and saw years of friendship crumbling in real time. The Sarah I'd known since college was disappearing, replaced by someone harder, someone who'd been betrayed in the worst possible way. I'm sorry, I whispered. It was inadequate, pathetic, but it was all I had. You're sorry? Her voice rose slightly, drawing glances from other cafe patrons. That's it? 2 years of fucking my fiancé and you're sorry? Sarah, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you comforted me when I worried about Marcus being distant, knowing exactly why he was pulling away. How you helped me plan a wedding to a man you were sleeping with. How you stood there and smiled while I picked out my dress, knowing you were going to be wearing white lace under yours when you fucked him the night before my wedding. Each word was like a slap. I deserved every one of them. It wasn't supposed to happen, I said desperately. It just evolved. We tried to stop, but what? But you couldn't keep your hands off each other. But my feelings didn't matter. but destroying my life was worth a few good orgasms? The people at nearby tables were definitely staring now. Sarah didn't seem to care. I never meant to hurt you, I said, tears starting to fall. You never meant to get caught, she corrected. There's a difference. She was right. If I'd truly cared about not hurting her, I would have ended things after the first time. Instead, I'd gotten addicted to the thrill, to feeling chosen over someone else, to having something that was supposed to be hers. What are you going to do? I asked. Sarah gathered up the photos and papers, sliding them back into the folder with methodical precision. First, I'm going to confront Marcus, show him all of this evidence, and watch him try to lie his way out of it. Then I'm going to call off the wedding, obviously, cancel the venue, the flowers, the photographer, inform all our guests that the bride's maid of honor was fucking the groom. My face burned with shame. The thought of everyone knowing, of becoming the cautionary tale people would whisper about at future weddings, was almost unbearable. Then, Sarah continued, I'm going to sue you for alienation of affection. It's an old law, but it's still on the books in this state. You can be held financially responsible for destroying my relationship. I'd never heard of such a thing, but I didn't doubt she'd researched it thoroughly. And Marcus? I asked. Marcus is going to lose everything, she said with cold satisfaction. His business depends on contracts from my father's construction firm. Those contracts have morality clauses. When Daddy finds out that his future son-in-law was cheating with my maid of honor, Marcus will never work in this industry again. She stood up, slinging her purse over her shoulder. I loved you like a sister, she said quietly. I trusted you with everything. My fears, my dreams, my secrets. I would have done anything for you. Sarah, Don't. She held up a hand to stop me. Don't apologize again. Don't make excuses. Just stay away from me, both of you. And if I ever see you at any event where I'm present, I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. She left me sitting there surrounded by the wreckage of our friendship, drowning in guilt and shame. I called Marcus as soon as I got home, my hand shaking so badly I could barely dial. She has everything, I said when he answered. Photos, credit card records, phone logs, 2 years worth of evidence. Fuck. I heard him moving around, probably pacing. Okay, we need to get our stories straight. We say it was just a few times, not ongoing. We say it meant nothing, that we both regret it. Marcus, did you hear me? She has photos of us, hotel receipts. This isn't something we can minimize or explain away. Then what do you want me to do? He shouted. Confess everything and let her destroy both our lives? She's going to destroy them anyway. At least if we're honest. Honest about what? That we've been lying to her for 2 years? That we're both terrible people? How does that help anyone? I realized then that Marcus was never going to take responsibility for what we'd done. He was going to fight it, minimize it, blame circumstances and stress and anything except his own choices. I can't do this anymore, I said quietly. Can't do what? Lie, pretend, act like we're the victims here. I took a deep breath. I'm going to call Sarah and tell her everything. The truth about how it started, how long it's been going on, how sorry I am. Emma, no, that's exactly what she wants. If you confess everything, she'll use it against us in court. Let her. I deserve whatever consequences come from this. I don't, he said coldly. I won't let you destroy my life because you want to ease your conscience. The line went dead. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. If you contact Sarah or admit to anything, I will deny everything and claim you're obsessed with me. I have evidence that you initiated contact multiple times. Don't test me. I stared at the message in disbelief. Marcus was threatening me, trying to rewrite history to make me the pursuer and himself the victim. After 2 years of telling me he loved me, of saying I was the only person who understood him, he was ready to throw me under the bus to save himself. That's when I made my decision. I called Sarah's number, not expecting her to answer. She picked up on the third ring. What do you want, Emma? To tell you the truth, all of it, without excuses or minimization. I already know the truth. I have evidence. You have facts. You don't have the story behind them. You don't know how it started or why it continued or how many times I wanted to tell you but couldn't find the courage. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Fine, she said finally. You have one chance. Come to my apartment. Now. And Emma, if you lie to me about anything, if I find out later that you held back even the smallest detail, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. An hour later, I sat in Sarah's living room surrounded by the engagement photos I'd helped arrange, the wedding planning binders I'd contributed to, the evidence of a life I'd helped destroy. Sarah sat across from me, her face impassive, waiting. I told her everything, how Marcus had seemed vulnerable and conflicted during the birthday planning, how I'd offered support that turned into emotional intimacy that turned into physical betrayal, how we'd justified it as temporary, then as inevitable, then as something we couldn't control. I told her about the hotels, the lies we'd told to create time together, the close calls when we'd almost been caught. I told her about the guilt that ate at me daily, and the addiction to secrecy that kept me coming back for more. I told her about every conversation where Marcus had expressed doubts about their relationship, every time he'd compared her unfavorably to me, every moment when he'd made me feel like I was special enough to risk everything for. And I told her about the recent weeks, when the weight of deception had become unbearable, but the fear of consequences had kept me silent. Through it all, Sarah just listened, her expression never changing. When I finished, she was quiet for several minutes. Do you love him? She asked finally. The question caught me off guard. I thought I did, but I think I was just addicted to being chosen over someone else, to feeling special and wanted and important. And you think he loves you? I thought about Marcus's threat, his willingness to destroy me to protect himself. No, I don't think he's capable of loving anyone more than he loves himself. Sarah nodded like this confirmed something she'd suspected. He called me 20 minutes ago, she said. Told me you've been obsessed with him, that you pursued him relentlessly until he gave in a few times out of pity. He claims you're trying to frame him because he rejected you. My stomach dropped. Marcus had followed through on his threat. That's not true, I said desperately. Sarah, I know I have no credibility left, but that's not how it happened. I know, she said simply. You do? Emma, I've known Marcus for 3 years. I've seen how he operates when he wants something. He's charming and persistent and very good at making people feel special. That story he told me, it doesn't match the man I know. She pulled out her phone and played a recording. Marcus's voice filled the room, explaining how I'd seduced him, how he'd tried to stay faithful, but eventually succumbed to my advances. I recorded the call, Sarah said, because I knew he would try to rewrite history, and because I wanted to hear how he'd throw you under the bus to save himself. Why are you telling me this? Because despite everything you've done, you're sitting here taking responsibility for your choices. He's trying to make himself the victim. She turned off the recording. You're both terrible people who betrayed someone who loved you, but at least you're being honest about it. Sarah stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street below. The wedding is off, obviously. I've already started making calls. The venue, the caterer, the photographer. Most deposits are non-refundable, so I'm out about $15,000. I winced. Sarah, I'll pay you back. Whatever it costs, With what money? She asked without turning around. You're a graphic designer who lives paycheck to paycheck. It would take you years to pay me back, and frankly, I don't want to be connected to you for that long. Then what can I do? How can I make this right? She turned back to face me, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw genuine sadness in her eyes instead of anger. You can disappear, she said quietly, from my life, from our mutual friends, from every space where I might accidentally. You can let me heal without constant reminders of how thoroughly you betrayed. And Marcus is going to learn what happens when you cross someone whose father owns half the commercial real estate in this city. His business contracts will be terminated by Monday. His professional reputation will be destroyed. And since our house is in my name, he'll be homeless by the end of the week. The vindictive satisfaction in her voice was scary, but I couldn't argue with it. Marcus had made his choices. Now he'd live with the consequences. I'll leave town, I said. Find work somewhere else. You'll never have to see me again. Sarah nodded. Good. Pack everything you can't live without. Leave everything else behind. Start over somewhere far away and try to become a better person than you are right now. I stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I said. Marcus doesn't deserve you. He never did. You're going to find someone who loves you completely, who would never risk losing you for anyone or anything. And you're going to be happier than you ever would have been with him. I know, Sarah said, but it doesn't undo what you did to me. I know. I'm sorry isn't enough, but I need you to know that I am sorry and ashamed and completely aware that I destroyed the best friendship I've ever had for something that was never real. She didn't respond. I let myself out and never saw her again. I quit my job the next Monday and moved to Portland within 2 weeks. I left most of my furniture, took only clothes and personal items that fit in my car. Starting over at 31 was terrifying, but it felt like the only path toward redemption. For the first 6 months, I barely functioned. The guilt was overwhelming, the loneliness crushing. I'd wake up wanting to call Sarah about something funny I'd seen or heard, then remember that I'd destroyed that relationship forever. I started therapy, working through the choices that had led me to betray someone I loved. I took a job at a small design firm and kept my head down, building a new life one day at a time. I never heard from Marcus again. Through mutual acquaintances back home, I learned that Sarah's father had indeed blacklisted him from the construction industry. He'd moved back to his hometown and was working for his uncle's small contracting business. His reputation never recovered. 18 months after I left, I received a text from an unknown number. I'm getting married next month, to someone who deserves honesty. Thought you should know I found my happy ending. I knew it was Sarah. I wrote and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, I'm genuinely happy for you. You deserve every happiness. She never replied, but I didn't expect her to. 3 years later, I'm still in Portland. I have a good job, a small circle of friends who don't know my history, and a quiet life that feels honest in a way my old life never did. I date occasionally, but carefully. Trust is something I'm still learning to give and receive again. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never agreed to help plan Sarah's birthday party. If Marcus and I had never been thrown together, never developed that initial connection that grew into something destructive. But I know that line of thinking is useless. We made choices. I made choices. And those choices had consequences that rippled through multiple lives. I think about Sarah often, especially on what would have been her wedding day. I hope she's happy. I hope she found someone who loves her completely and honestly. I hope she has the life she planned, just with a different man standing beside her. As for me, I'm learning to live with the weight of what I did. Some days are harder than others. Some days, the guilt is so overwhelming I can barely function. But most days, I'm grateful for the chance to start over, to try to be better than I was. I'll never forgive myself for betraying Sarah, but I'm slowly learning to forgive myself for being human, for making catastrophic mistakes, for choosing poorly when I should have chosen better. It's not redemption. I'm not sure I deserve that, but it's something. And sometimes, that's enough. The hardest lesson I learned is that some betrayals can't be undone, only lived with. Some friendships can't be repaired, only mourned. And some mistakes are so fundamental that they change who you are forever. I'm not the same person who agreed to be Sarah's maid of honor while sleeping with her fiancé. I hope I'm better. I'm certainly more honest, more aware of the weight of my choices and their impact on others. And if I've learned anything from this experience, it's that secrets are corrosive. They eat away at everything good until only lies and justifications remain. Truth is painful, devastating, life-altering, but it's also the only foundation on which anything real can be built. I told the truth too late to save my friendship with Sarah, but it wasn't too late to save myself from becoming someone I couldn't live with. That has to be enough.